Good afternoon. Almost lunchtime, so I'll try and keep you awake just before lunch. And I'd like to thank the India Foundation, the BPRND, Ministry of Home, Government of India, Government of Haryana, Prabha, thank you for inviting me. It's very hot on the stage here with all these lights, but I guess the session before was a little bit warmer. And just some advice, maybe people should hug and make up rather than expand this massive problem we're facing throughout the world. It would be a solution. I should add it to my speech here. The war on terror is something we all know about. Or is it a war of terror? Everybody in the past 2 days has spoken about this, academics, generals, ministers, politicians. One prediction that I've picked up from this conference is that it's not going to end anytime soon, unfortunately. Terrorism today is not like terrorism of yesterday. And I think the threat is something that's going to really interfere with global stability, even this year in 2018. We have a terror that there are no borders. There are no physical borders. It doesn't matter how many fences you put up or checkpoints or immigration points. There are no more borders in terrorism. I think we're going to see more and more of a cyber terrorism, of a different type of terrorism. Closing down internets may be a solution, but it's going to cut normal people off from their lives. Why are we here today? Why are we holding this think tank, this conference? Apart from tit for tat between countries, we did, we didn't. We should be sharing. We should be sharing and caring. We should be stopping the war on terrorism. This is what this conference is all about. Most countries focus on improving awareness of the threat to their citizens, developing capabilities to prepare and respond, and enhancing engagement with partner countries and other international actors. In order to understand the future of terrorism, as this conference says, I think we must look at the past just a little. We're all aware of what happened and how terror has been going on and for how long terror has been going on. It's nothing new, especially to the young generation of analysts sitting in the room here. I think, though, and I agree with everybody else, I think the attacks of Al-Qaeda on 9/11, September the 11th, 2001, brought a new era of terrorism, an era of live open source, mass media, which gave the world a Bollywood, Hollywood platform to watch in real time. The events unfolding live in real time on our screens, on our phones, is something that wasn't dealt with before. Prior to 9/11, while really crossing the mind of an average individual, many analysts viewed the geopolitical weapon of terror primarily to the Middle East. Somebody brought up the IRA this morning. But primarily, I think the focus has always been on the Middle East, as it is today. Other countries suffer from terror. There have been remarkable acts of terror before 9/11, the Munich Olympic massacre, 1972. That targeted Israelis, really, not the Olympics and not the world, but it affected everybody. The Lockberry bombing of the Pan Am Flight 103. But again, that was Middle East and Gaddafi. 9/11 was different. I think everybody here will agree with that. The attack brought into focus a sensitive subject that had otherwise been relegated to the margins only of the Western psyche. With the response that unfortunately today we are all familiar with. More terror attacks followed 9/11, the Madrid train bombings, maybe some of you have forgotten, London in 2005, Bali 2002, Turkey 2003, Morocco, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. In Israel, I'll get to Israel as well since I come from there. It wasn't mentioned on the list before. I didn't see terror attacks, but Israel, since 2000, almost 1,500 people have been killed in senseless terror. In fact, 16 years ago, almost to the day, on the 27th of March, 2002, I witnessed a suicide bomber walk into a room like this. a room with people sitting down for the Passover festival, something that celebrates the escape of Jews from slavery in Egypt, and blew himself up senselessly in a civilian environment. At the time, Hamas, who hasn't been mentioned at all in this conference, celebrated on the streets of Gaza, as they did for the Bali attack, and Madrid, and Turkey, and in the US. I was there. In fact, I've been around for 16 terror attacks. I think more than most people have watched on CNN primetime. The pain, for me, is deep. Having 30 people carried out on tables pretty much like you're sitting at now, it hurts, it leaves a scar. By the turn of this decade, however, intelligence agencies became more adept globally in collecting the necessary information to thwart terror. All intelligence agencies. While Osama bin Laden and his henchmen were on the run, an offshoot called ISIS, Daesh, became firmly entrenched in Iraq and, yes, Syria. And there, amid this American-led war, that the nature of terrorism once again changed. 8 years ago, in 2010, a good friend of mine and well-attributed author, Yaakov Lapin, wrote a book called Virtual Caliphate, 8 years ago. He described how ISIS would use computer servers around the world using what he called virtual caliphate. And it is till to this day, as everybody's mentioned. Anne showed some very interesting, where's Anne? In the back. Showed some very interesting video material yesterday, showing this caliphate, how it still goes on, and reversing it, to understand the psyche and what goes on behind the politics, behind everything, behind the uniform or the clothing or the weapon. In his book, Lapin showed basically how radicals equipped with 21st century technology try to achieve a 7th century vision and bring this into a virtual world. I'm going to cut my speech a little bit short because of time as requested, so I'm just going to jump a little bit. But we all knew that after what happened in Syria and Iraq, the world would take action. 70 different countries, with the United States dealing with the problem of ISIS. A fascinating spin, and in reality, Hezbollah too waged combat against ISIS in Syria and assisted Assad. This was when the Assad regime started to lose control in 2011, and it started to barrel bomb or otherwise attack other Sunni populations. While there are parallels between the two situations, they differ principally, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but a testament to the success in spreading its ideology, using technology and, yes, the media, has taken a greater grasp on supporters around the world. Perhaps today we're in a better situation because people of all religions, all faiths, ethnic groups, and nations, as well as leaders, are recognizing what terror really is indeed, calling it by its name, terror. Unless you've witnessed terror, you cannot understand what it is. By contrast, it's a realization that many global analysts contend came too late and thus prevented the implementation or adequate counter-terror measures. Much too late. Statistics have just shown it in your speech. Analysts asserted that one must be able to identify a threat correctly, know thy enemy, and in order to combat it. Do we know the enemy? Really? Can we really recognize them? Something we should ask. We have seen acts of terror by lone wolves around the world, everywhere. Germany, wherever you go. The States, Russia, Aeroflot coming out of Sinai, a plane taken down. Everybody's a target, somehow. Looking at terrorism of the future, we need to start today. Start again. Have a closer look. As technologies become more advanced, many security agencies have strong capabilities to intercept and interrupt large-scale operations, terror operations, as there are more people involved and it's easier to intercept their communications and movements. It's easier to track them and contain them in a proactive manner. No matter where in the world you may be from, our global emphasis on moving forward in tackling terrorism of the future should be in integrating traditional intelligence gathering with high-end technological solutions, while still closely monitoring the connections between whatever organized structures, both Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who are still relevant, and those who share the ideology and motivation abroad. We cannot ignore the importance of religious doctrine in the overall battle against the future of terrorism. We will not be able to contain the threat of terrorism so long as both use the same strategies and maintain the same perceptions. The issue of future terror is multidimensional, multi-layered, and there's no one enemy that we can characterize. Yeah, sure. Just one sentence and I will conclude. Using technology and other resources, the Times of Israel reported that according to figures released in December 2017, the Israeli Domestic Security Agency foiled no fewer than 400 significant planned terrorist attacks just in 2017. These included 13 planned suicide bombings, 228 gun attacks, 50 bombings, and it goes on and on and on. Many of these attacks were planned by local terrorists. One can only imagine what daily life in Israel would look like if they had succeeded. I must conclude in a somewhat pessimistic manner by stating that even if the world was to come together and invest heavily with all the possible resources available, we would not be able to prevent all of the terror attacks. But optimistically, I say that by using the correct assets, methods, strategies, tools, technologies, and unison, working together, we can prevent, if not all, most of the terror attacks. The future of terrorism really depends on the techniques we use in identifying the terrorists, their sponsors, and the mindset, early enough to make them identifiable. Retaliation against certain types of stealth terror, such as cyber terror, will be, if not impossible, very difficult to prevent. If we could just play that quick video, and thank you very much.
Thank you.